Next is the Solow model, which is a step ahead from the Harrod model, which tried to cover the gaps that Harrod model had identified. Now, Solow's twist on the Harrod-Dumar story is based on a very important assumption, which is the law of diminishing returns to individual factors of production. The Solow model is reliant on this law, which says that there is diminishing marginal returns from individual factors of production. So if we believe that capital and labor are the two most important factors of production, we are saying that capital and labor work together to produce output. And if there is plenty of labor relative to capital, then a little bit of capital will go a long way. Which means that if you have, if relatively labor is greater than capital, or the capital labor ratio is decreasing, then we can say that the marginal product of capital will be higher. A little bit of capital will go a long way. That's just an explanation for increasing marginal product of capital. And what do we mean by marginal product of capital? That a unit change in capital will lead to a higher change in the output. What is marginal product of capital? Change in output with respect to change in capital. So if marginal product of capital is increasing, it indicates that for a unit change in capital, change in output will be very high. And this will happen when labor is relatively abundant as compared to capital. So when labor is abundant, there is plenty of labor relative to capital, then marginal product of capital will increase, and which means that a little bit of capital will go a long way. In a way, we can say that when labor is relatively relatively in abundance as compared to capital, then the capital output ratio will fall, right? Which was an important parameter in the Harrod model as well. This capital output ratio was denoted by theta. So we can say that if labor is in abundance relative to capital, then marginal product of capital will increase, which means that for a unit change in capital, you will produce a higher amount of output, which in a way also signifies a lower capital output ratio. And we know from the Harrod results that if theta is lesser, then the small g value will be greater, meaning that the economy will grow at a higher rate. But now we have made this theta as an endogenous variable here. So in the Solow model, we say that theta is endogenous. We are not saying that this is determined outside the model. We are saying that this is actually determined within the model. It depends on the distribution of labor and capital in the economy. The value of theta, whether this will increase or decrease, will depend on how capital and labor are available in the economy, which one is more abundant as compared to other. So conversely, if there was a shortage of labor, shortage of labor meaning that capital is greater than labor, or the capital labor ratio is increasing, then the capital intensive methods are used at the margin and the incremental capital output ratio will rise. So in this scenario, when labor is less than capital, we can expect theta to be increasing, opposite to what we see here when labor is in abundance relative to capital. So according to the Solow model, by assuming that there is law of diminishing returns to individual factors of production, which was missed, there was no such assumption in the Harrod model. It is only in the Solow model that we assume that the factors of production follow law of diminishing returns, and because of this assumption, we can say that the capital output ratio is an endogenous parameter. It is not exogenously determined, it is determined within the model. Moving ahead, To understand these, the implications of this model, we need to first derive certain equations as we did in the Harrod model. So let's look at these equations and see how we can make a sense of these equations. So the first equation here, 3.8, is nothing but a reiteration of the last equations, where it is just a capital equation, how capital grows over a period of time. So capital in time period t plus 1 will be equal to 1 minus delta times capital in time period t, which is the capital that is adjusted for depreciation. So this is nothing but kt minus delta times kt. If you open the brackets here, this is nothing but kt minus delta times kt, which is the amount of capital that's adjusted for depreciation, depreciated capital. That's the first term. And investment that's made in the time period t. If you add all these three terms, you will get capital in time period t plus 1. So we are just replacing, believing that at equilibrium investment will be equal to total savings. We are replacing this investment term with this term, which is equal to total savings. And that is how we get equation 3.8. Now, what we are doing here is we are dividing the entire equation by population in time period t. And we are assuming that population grows at a constant rate n, that is p t plus 1 is equal to 1 plus n into pt. These are all same set of equations that we had looked at in the last model as well. So we are dividing both sides of 3.8 with pt, and this is the result that we get. So if you divide capital K by P in time period t plus 1, we're just looking at the left hand side first. How do we reach 3.9? Although it's very simple, but just to demonstrate, I'll just quickly show you how we've reached 3.9 from 3.8. So we are dividing the left hand side, sorry, we are dividing it by pt, not pt plus 1. So we are dividing it by pt. Now what I've done is that I will just replace pt with pt plus 1 divided by 1 plus n from this equation. So I can say that from this equation pt is nothing but pt plus 1 divided by n. So from this equation, the growth equation of population, I can say pt is nothing but pt plus 1 divided by 1 plus n, which will go in the numerator. So my final term will become 1 by 1 plus n into kt plus 1 by pt plus 1. You will notice that on the left hand side here you have 1 plus n into small kt plus 1. This small kt plus 1 represents capital per capita, meaning total amount of capital divided by total amount of population. So now we are converting every variable in this equation into per capita form. So we are talking, we are saying that this small k is nothing but capital per capita in time period t plus 1. So this entire ratio here is substituted with small k t plus 1. Capital K will represent the total amount of capital, small k will represent the total amount of capital per capita. Right. Now if you look at the right hand side, then on the right hand side, this is the first term, which is very simple. So you are dividing the right hand side with pt. If you divide it by pt, then 1 minus delta will be written as it is. Capital KT divided by capital KT, capital PT will become small kt, again representing the capital per capita in time period t. This term, again you are dividing this term by pt, so small s will stay as it is and y by p will become small y. So this is output per capita or income per capita. This is capital per capita. This is actually the main equation here, which we'll try to present on a graph as well. We'll visually look at what this equation represents. Complete this model, we need to understand the importance of the production functions. So we know what a production function means. It basically is a production function basically represents some technical knowledge of the economy. So we say that if y is equal to function of small k, usually you would have seen a production function as capital Y is a function of k and l, where we say that Y is related to the values of capital and labor in an economy, and how does Y get changed with the changes in the value of capital and labor is explained by this function capital F, right? And this function, basically the implicit function, mathematical function that you have here, basically represents the technical know-how of the economy. Now we are converting, again another important assumption here of the Solow model is that we believe that this production function follows constant returns to scale. So another assumption here is that we say that this production function follows constant returns to scale. I hope all of you know what constant returns to scale means. It means that if let's look at the annexure. So we are basically converting this production function, where we are saying that this production function follows constant returns to scale. We are converting this into this production function in the form of per capita output and per capita capital. So capital Y gets translated into small y, and capital and labor here gets translated into small k, and these two are nothing but the same functions. They are just transformations of each other. How do we transform this? We'll just look at the annexure and understand how do we get this per capita equation, per capita production function from the total production function. We are believing that the production function follows constant returns to scale. That has to be kept in mind. That is an assumption of the Solow model. Okay, so constant returns to scale. What do we mean by constant returns to scale? So we say basically that if we increase the amount of capital and labor by some proportion lambda, then the entire output will also increase by the same proportion lambda. That is called as the constant returns to scale. If instead of lambda, we substitute 1 by p, so we believe that this is true for production functions which follow constant returns to scale, that if we increase the inputs by a certain proportion, then the output will also increase by the same proportion. Now we are keeping this proportion lambda to be equal to 1 by p. When we substitute lambda to be equal to 1 by p, what is the result that we get? Lambda k will become k by p, lambda L will become 1, because L and P basically represent the same thing. So total, we are believing that total amount of population is equal to total amount of labor. So that will become 1. And left hand side will be F of K into P. We are basically converting L into P here. So F of K into P will be divided by P. This is the left hand side. Now this will basically give you this small equation that we just saw here. How would that give you this equation will become clear in a while. So basically this left hand side is nothing. This represents capital Y, the numerator represents capital Y, and the denominator is capital P. So this will become small y, which we get here. And this is nothing, this capital K divided by capital P is nothing but small k. So we can say that y, small y, is a function of small k and 1, which can be written as small y is a function of small k. So from this function, which is capital Y is equal to function of capital K and L, we have retrieved this function in the per capita. One very important and a very fundamental factor that you should keep in mind is that you can only derive this production function, this per capita production function, when you believe that this capital production function, this original, the total capital production function follows constant returns to scale. You can convert this function into this function only when you believe that the production function follows constant returns to scale. Suppose this function followed increasing returns to scale, then you will notice that you can't really convert this production function into this production function. Then the entire meaning, the entire production function will get changed and your calculation will also get changed. So it's very important to keep this assumption in your head that this production function and the results that we derive in our equations will only hold true when the production function follows constant returns to scale. If the production function follows increasing returns to scale or decreasing returns to scale, then you will have to make these adjustments in your calculation to get the final results. All the calculations that we are making in our model in this text are only true for production functions which are following constant returns to scale. Moving ahead, so this figure here, figure 3.3, basically shows a typical production function with diminishing returns to per capita capital. So here on the x-axis you have capital per capita, which is the small k, and on the y-axis you have output per capita, which is small y. And we know that for constant returns to scale, small y is a function of small k. And we also know that another assumption of the Solow model is that factors of production follow diminishing returns to scale. They follow diminishing returns to factor, and which means that with an incremental increase in capital, the contribution, the marginal contribution to output will fall. That doesn't mean that it will lead to negative output production. You will notice that the output will still increase with an increase in capital per capita, but it will increase at a decreasing rate, and that's why you see this looks like an increasing concave function. So if you had to check the output capital ratios at 2 points, let's say this is point A and this is point B, and if you join these points to the origin, this basically gives you the ratio of output by capital. So output per capita, when you divide that with capital per capita, the P will get cancelled, which is the population. You will be left with output per capita. So this angle basically gives you the ratio between output and capital. And you will notice that as you move from point A to point B, which is that when capital per capita increases, this is a smaller level of capital per capita, this is a higher level of capital per capita, and as you move from K to K bar, you notice that the output capital ratio is decreasing. This angle is greater than this angle, meaning that from point A to point B, output per capital is decreasing, meaning that this is basically reciprocal of total output ratio 1 by theta. So you are saying that output per capital is decreasing, meaning that for a unit amount of capital you are now producing lesser output. So when you say that this is decreasing as this angle decreases from point A to point B, meaning that the reciprocal of theta is decreasing, or in other words we can say that theta is increasing. So from point A to point B, capital output ratio tends to increase. From this production function, because of diminishing returns to factor, we can see that as capital increases, now you know that this is capital per capita. So the background that we had set right in the beginning of the discussion, which was that this is nothing but capital labor ratio, right? Capital per capita. So when we say that capital per capita is increasing, we are saying that relative to labor, the amount of capital increases. So capital is in abundance relative to labor, meaning that the marginal product of capital will decrease. If marginal product of capital will decrease, then for a unit change in capital, contribution in the output will fall, which in other words means that capital output ratio is increasing. So for producing a particular level of output, you now require more amount of capital. So each unit of capital has become less effective in contributing to the output production. So you see that as you move in the increasing direction of capital per capita, the theta, which is the capital output ratio, tends to decrease in this production function, which has been derived by us based on the assumptions of a constant returns to scale production function. This is the second figure that you see here, figure 3.4, which tries to these two figures are nothing but a visual representation of this equation that we just looked at in the last class, which is this equation. So this is left hand side, you will notice you have a term which is 1 plus n into k t plus 1, and on the right hand side you have two terms here. One of the terms here is nothing but the production function itself. It is just a proportion of the production function. So you are basically multiplying savings rate with the production function, and savings, since it is a rate, it will be most cases it will be less than 1, because you can't really save more than the income that you already have. So the savings rate will basically be between 0 and 1. So it could be 0.5, 0.8, something like that. So you are basically taking a proportion of this production function on the right hand side, and then you are adding a constant term here and another linearly increasing term here. So we'll just try to put this figure out put this equation in the form of a figure. So just remember this equation, and then we'll move on to the figure and see how we can picturize this in these figures. All right, so this equation, the left hand term, which was 1 plus n into k, the y-axis and the x-axis are still the same. The x-axis is capital per capita, small k, and the y-axis is output per capita. You notice that this line here that you see, the linear increasing line here, is nothing but the left hand term, 1 plus a into k. And this curve here, which looks something like the production function itself, is the right hand term, which is 1 minus delta k. Now 1 minus delta k is a constant added to savings. This is what the right hand side represents. Now for the equation to exist, the left hand side has to be equal to the right hand side, and on this graph this is the point where the two tends to be equal to each other. So this equation that we just derived will be true at this point. But what is actually happening at points other than this point? You will notice in a while that this point is often called as the steady state of capital per capita. So this is represented by K star, and this is called as the steady state. We will just discuss why this is called as the steady state. This figure on the right hand side here, part B, is the same figure as this. This line represents the left hand side, which is 1 plus n into k t plus 1, and this curve represents the right hand term. Again, the point where they meet is called as the steady state. This is basically the point where the equation will hold true. Now these two figures are different in one aspect, which is the initial point of capital. So you will notice that there are 3 points here, 3 capital points here. The first one being the point of 1996, the second being the point of 97, and the third being the point of 98. So we are basically taking 2 scenarios. First scenario is that we are beginning with an initial capital stock for a specific economy, and we are taking the initial time period to be 96. We are saying that in 1996 a particular economy X was at this point, the capital per capita in that economy was at this point, and we want to know what transition would happen in this economy given these terms, given the left hand side and the right hand side. Remember that the right hand side has a specific savings rate, has a depreciation rate, has a population rate. So these parameters are specific to a certain economy, and in coherence to these parameters we have drawn these figures here. So if the savings rate is so and so, this is the figure that comes out. If the population growth rate is so and so, this is the figure that comes out. So we have basically drawn these graphs in reference to the numbers of the parameters that we have in this equation for a specific economy. Now we are saying that given this saving rate, given this depreciation rate, given this population growth rate, this is the steady state of capital for this economy. What is the steady state of capital will eventually become clear, but just for now remember this term, that the point where the two equations meet, the capital per capita at this particular point is called as the steady state of capital per capita. Now suppose that this economy was initially at this point. You can't really expect the economy to start from capital, the steady state of capital per capita. We are saying that the economy starts from a point of capital per capita which is less than the steady state of capital per capita. So what are the kind of changes that will happen in this economy? So we know that the right hand side basically tells you for a specific time period, it tells you the amount of capital stock that should exist in the next time period, right? Because what are the terms that you have on the right hand side? The first term is the depreciation adjusted capital stock in time period T, and this is the investment that you are making in time period T. So when you add the investment to the depreciation adjusted capital stock, you will get the amount of capital stock that you should have in the next time period. So in K, at this point, 1996 capital stock, what is the corresponding value for the right hand term? This value, right? And if I try and picture this on this term here, which is a left hand term, this is the value that I get. So for 1997, this is the capital stock that I should have for the next time period, right? So this is the capital stock that I have for the next time period. Similarly for 1997, I will try to picturize this point on the right hand term. It comes out to be this value. I will just place this on the x-axis. I want to know what will be the value of capital stock in 1998. It will give me this value. And I will notice that with each passing time period, the capital stock is increasing, but it is increasing at a decreasing rate. So the changes that you see here are actually decreasing. This is the change in the first time period, then this is the change in the second time period, this is the change in the third time period, and basically there will be a decreasing change in the capital stock with each passing time period. And the reason why this is happening is because we have assumed that the capital stock, the factors of production follow diminishing returns to factor, and it will keep on increasing till the point it reaches the steady state of capital stock. The point where the right hand term tends to be equal to the left hand term, this is the point where this transition process will stop occurring. Similarly, if you take a point, an initial point such as this, in figure A we had taken the initial point to be less than the steady state of capital. हमने K assume करा था 1996 में, which was less than K star. In this figure we are saying that the K in 1996 is greater than K star. This is K star, steady state, which is where the equation holds true, and I am taking the initial position to be greater than the steady state of capital. This is 1996. So again 1996 में कितना next year के लिए capital stock generate होगा. Now you notice that on this side of the figure, that is capital stock greater than K star, you notice that the that this value, which is basically the population, this 1 plus nk tells you the amount of capital adjusted for the population growth rate, and this graph tends to be greater than the net addition. This is the net addition here to the capital stock, and this is the withdrawal, capital adjusted for the population growth rate, and you see that this tends to be greater than this. So you will notice that there will be a negative addition to capital stock when you start from a point above the steady state of capital. In this case, you were noticing that there was net addition because this curved line was above the linear line here. So you were noticing that with each passing time period, the capital stock was increasing. There was net addition to the capital stock. In this case, you notice that with each passing time period, the capital per capita stock is actually decreasing. The reason being that the population growth rate is much higher than the net addition to the capital stock. So since this is greater than this, you notice that in 1997, the capital stock will decrease to this point. Now again in 1997, this is the level of capital stock that will be added. You will again capture this point and this will give you the capital stock of 1998. Similarly, you will try and figure out 1999 and so on till you reach this point of K star. So no matter where your economy starts from, if it starts from capital stock below the steady state of capital or it starts from capital stock above the steady state of capital, because of this rule of law of diminishing returns to factor, it will eventually stabilize at a point which is called as the steady state of capital. So irrespective of the initial point, irrespective of the initial state of an economy, the economy given the parameters of savings rate, depreciation rate and population growth rate, it will eventually stabilize at this point of steady state of capital. Basically just talk about how do you reach the steady state of capital. This paragraph is important to read. So in other words, what we are saying from the figures is that growth in the Solow model loses its momentum if capital is growing too fast relative to labor. So we noticed that if capital is growing too fast relative to labor, then growth loses its momentum, which is precisely what happens to the left of K star. So if you remember in the diagram to the left of K star, as K increases, which is this K is nothing but the capital labor ratio. So if K is increasing, if small k is increasing, then what we are trying to say is that numerator is increasing much more than the denominator. When we say that a particular ratio is increasing, it signifies that the numerator is increasing at a much greater rate as compared to the denominator. So we are saying that the growth in capital stock is faster as compared to the growth in the labor stock. And when this happens, when the capital is growing too fast relative to labor, then the growth in the Solow model, this growth is the growth in the output. So the growth in the output will slow down, which is what we see with each passing year. We see that the net addition is smaller and smaller. So the growth will lose its momentum if capital tends to grow faster than the labor. And the reason is diminishing returns to capital, which creates a downward movement in the capital output ratio as capital is accumulated faster than labor. This means that in the long run, which is captured by the steady state ratio, at this point, we see that the long run capital labor ratio must be constant. So at K star, we believe that there will be stabilization of the process, and which basically also means that at this particular point, the capital stock is growing at the same rate as that of labor. So if I had to demonstrate growth rates of capital and labor, then I'm saying that at points to the left of steady state, growth rate of capital is greater than growth rate of labor. This is what's happening to the left of K star. But at K star, growth rate of capital is actually equal to growth rate of labor, and that's the reason why K by L is constant and there is no movement at the steady state of capital. However, if per capita capital stock settles down to some steady state level, then so must per capita income. Now, this is a weird fact here, which will cast some doubts on the growth process in an economy. Which is that if capital stock settles down at K star in the Solow model, then we know that output is just a function of this K, right? Small k. So if K stays at K star, then Y will also stay at some Y star level, which means that no matter where we start from, we will always land up with an income level equal to Y star. Which means that even the Y, which is the output per capita, will stay constant in this model. So in the version of Solow model, are we saying that there is no long run growth of per capita output? Because once you reach K star level of capital, then ideally you must just settle at Y star level of output. So are we saying that there are only temporary growth occurring? There's only temporary growth occurring in the Solow model, and there is no permanent growth process, or there is no long run growth process of per capita output in this model. So what is actually happening is that the total output is only growing, but the per capita output is constant. So in particular, in this model, we are saying that the savings rate has no long run effect on the growth rate of output, in sharp contrast to the prediction of the Harrod model. In the Harrod model, we said that G increases, which is the growth rate of output per capita. Even G star increases with the increase in the savings rate. That was the result that had been led out by the Harrod-Domar model. But in the Solow model, we see that once you reach, so if we just go back to the figure, once you reach this point, it is true that you will notice some growth occurring in an economy. Suppose you start from this point. I will also just plot an output function here. So say this represents f of k. Right? I'm saying this is f of k. So I'm saying that as k increases, I will notice some growth in y. Because if this is the level of capital, then I can just extend this and identify that this is the level of output. At this level of capital, this is the level of output. So until I reach the K star point, I notice some growth rate in output. So this was the initial level of output, then it increases to this point. So there is growth in output. But this is only temporary growth in output. Because once I reach the steady state of capital here, capital per capita, I will reach Y star. So this point will basically be Y star. Once I have reached Y star, I notice no further change or no further growth in the output per capita. So I am saying that the output per capita in the Solow model stays constant once you have reached K star. Having said that, we also say that if you begin from this level of capital per capita, then between this level and this level, you will notice some growth in output. But this is only a temporary growth. So we are saying that savings in the Solow model is not leading to a long run growth rate in Y star. Whereas in the Harrod model, we saw that Y star or G star, which was the growth rate of per capita output, was strongly and positively related to the savings rate. But in this model, we don't see any such effect. And in fact, total output, which is so Y star can be written as capital Y star and P star. So I can say that per capita output at the steady state will be constant. Growth rate of per capita output will be constant, but the growth rate of total output will be equal to the growth rate of population growth rate. So the total output will only grow at the rate of population growth rate, whereas the output per capita will stay constant at the steady state level of capital. These are the results that we have established so far, but what exactly do we really mean the same in the Solow model, or there are more additions to the understanding of the Solow model is something that we will talk about and discuss more in the subsequent classes.